Many of us believe that nighttime is a period of inactivity, a biological pause where the mind simply shuts down to recharge. But if you are here, you already understand that this is a simplistic view, or at least you have had experiences that led you to question what really happens to you during sleep. During sleep, while the body is still, the mind, the core of consciousness, is in its state of most radical operational freedom. Sleep is not like a blackout. It is a mechanism of unanchoring. Your brain, temporarily freed from the obligations of physical reality, allows your consciousness to move in a much broader frequency. It is as if you are not just sleeping, but embarking on a nightly journey. It is a trip that science classifies only as dreams. But for those who seek knowledge, it is a real expedition into territories that defy logic. What you are about to discover is not just a theory. It is a perspective that can redefine your existence. If you deeply understand where your mind travels every night, you will never again accept your waking life, your limitations, or your possibilities in the same way. This nighttime journey challenges everything we accept as reality, and traditional science, in its search for purely material models, simply cannot explain what actually happens. Modern neurology has given us a detailed map of the phases of sleep, identifying the rapid eye movement period known as REM as the main stage of the most vivid dreams. REM sleep is remarkable not only for its eye movement, but also for the paradox it presents. While the brain exhibits electrical activity similar to that of wakefulness, the body enters a state of near paralysis, a muscular atonia. This is when your mind becomes a powerhouse of experience. Researchers precisely describe the chemical activation that validates our thesis. The prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and stability, quietens dramatically, while the limbic system, which governs emotions and long-term memory, lights up. This imbalance is scientific validation that the filter is being deactivated. The simplest explanation of this process would be that dreams are merely brain cleaning, memory processing, and information organization under temporarily deactivated logic. Although this description is factually correct about brain mechanics, it fails to capture the intrinsic quality of the dream experience. After all, what the scientific model cannot decode is the relentless vividness of a dream. If dreams are just random memory fragments being remixed, why do we wake up with deep sadness over a loss that never happened, or with the feeling of having lived an epic adventure that lasted days? These are not just chemical reactions. They are coherent experiences filled with meaning. The emotional impact of a dream often surpasses that of real events, leaving a psychological impression that lasts for hours or days, proving that something much more complex than simple data processing is happening. Think, for example, of that day when you woke up with a clear sense of nostalgia for a place you've never visited, or with the certainty of having had a decisive conversation that didn't actually happen. That's the weight of non-local experience. That feeling is tangible evidence that your mind wasn't simply processing yesterday. It was experiencing another reality in the first person. The experience is so real that it deceives your emotional memory, so it needs to be analyzed with the same seriousness as a real event. This anomaly forces us to reevaluate the very function of the mind during sleep. During dreams, the mind has the ability to generate complete scenarios, build characters with entire histories and personalities, and insert us into them as active participants. This narrative and emotional complexity points to a creative and experiential ability that transcends the biological need for rest. It is as if, freed from the body's material filter, the mind activates its own reality engine. To go deeper, we can see the dream as a high-definition video generated by a system that operates beyond visual input from the eyes and sequential logic from the waking state. The central question is not how the mind creates, but why it invests so many resources in this process. It is illogical to assume the mind would spend so much energy and detail to produce worlds that dissolve upon waking unless those worlds serve a functional purpose that goes beyond mere biological rest or emotional release. The recurrence of archetypal symbols, encounters with guides of wisdom, or the achievement of insights that change lives suggests that dreams are actually a communication channel. The failure of traditional science is assuming that the brain produces consciousness. However, the vividness and autonomy of the dream suggests that the brain is actually a frequency reducer, an organ that filters and stabilizes consciousness, limiting it to consensual reality. When this filter is temporarily loosened, the mind reveals its true unlimited nature. And this leads us to the first great barrier overcome by consciousness in its nightly journey, the very structure of how we perceive time. The problem is not what the brain does, but how the mind manipulates the most basic dimension of all, time. The most irrefutable proof that the mind frees itself from the rules of the physical world is the way it operates with time. In the waking state, time is an unstoppable arrow. It runs in a straight line, 1 second after another. However, inside a dream, 5 minutes of sleep can expand into hours, days, or even entire lifetimes, lived with rich detail and emotional impact. This temporal dilation is not just a perception trick. It is evidence that consciousness accessed a layer of reality where the Newtonian rules of chronology are suspended. This anomaly connects directly to the ideas of theoretical physics, especially the interpretation of the block universe theory. According to this view, time does not flow. The past, present, and future coexist simultaneously, like pages already written in a book that is simply waiting to be turned. Waking reality forces us to read one page at a time, but the mind freed in sleep gains the ability to access the entire volume at once. The dream, in this context, becomes active navigation inside a complete temporal archive that already exists. This is where we enter the concept of premonitions. Premonitions, dreaming of specific events, whether banal or tragic, that later materialize with frightening precision, stop being coincidences and become an inevitable byproduct of this navigation. Your mind, free to scan the structure of the block, simply sees a page your waking ego has not reached yet. This ability suggests that the perception of causality, what happens after what happened before, is just a necessary convention for the stability of our three-dimensional reality. By experiencing this elasticity of time, the mind is practically training to operate outside the limits of matter. Linear time, which we struggle with daily, is revealed as another stability filter imposed by the brain to maintain order. When this filter weakens during sleep, consciousness operates in its natural timeless state. This operation frees our potential for knowledge and gives us a glimpse into the functioning of the universe in its purest state. This does not mean you are traveling to the future, but that you are accessing a reality that already exists. But if the mind can transcend the barrier of time, can it transcend the barrier of space? Well, the most radical proof of its mobility is what we call detachment. Acceptance of the mind as a timeless navigator forces us to confront the paradox of space. Waking reality dictates that consciousness is strictly confined to the cranial box, that the mind is a direct product of the brain. However, for millennia and across multiple cultures, reports have emerged of an experience that dismantles this materialistic premise. Out-of-body experiences, OBE, or in older vocabulary, astral projection. The difference is subtle but profound. While the OBE is often described as spontaneous, astral projection, since the Hermetic teachings and Egyptian traditions is seen as the conscious displacement of the subtle body, or perispirit. For these traditions, this departure is not a neural error. It is the natural operation of your spiritual essence in your energetic body, which they call the astral body. What validates this mobility is the link that remains. In all esoteric knowledge, this separation is described as being guaranteed by the silver cord, a tenuous but indestructible energetic link that connects the physical body to the traveling consciousness. This cord ensures that no matter where your subtle self goes, return is always possible. These events are the most radical proof that your essence is non-local and that the principle of separation is not a theory but an inherent capacity. Different from common dreams, reports of OBE often involve total cognitive clarity and a capacity for observation that has been proven verifiable. In many accounts, individuals describe seeing their sleeping body from an external point of view, detailing objects and events happening in places physically inaccessible to them. The work of researchers like Robert Monroe, who meticulously catalog these exits of consciousness, reinforces the thesis that the mind can operate and collect data completely independently from physical senses. But to understand this, we must redefine the body. It is not the producer of consciousness, but its transducer, a kind of tuning antenna. Its main function is to filter vast and unlimited consciousness into a specific frequency, necessary to interact with and stabilize three-dimensional reality. The body works as an energetic anchor that keeps us connected to the present and the location. However, during deep sleep, this filtering function decreases, and consciousness becomes non-local, able to move through space without the restrictions of matter. The principle of separation, then, means that consciousness loosens, but does not disconnect. It distances itself from the body, keeping a minimal energetic link, enough to return, but enough to operate freely. This detachment reveals our true nature as mobile entities, capable of exploring the cosmos in a state that transcends the speed of light. And this has a profound impact on how we perceive reality. Because if the mind can move beyond physical space, the limitations we perceive in waking life are mostly illusory. And if your consciousness can unfold from physical matter, is there a mechanism that intentionally allows access to a broader spectrum of reality? Science, unintentionally, discovered the key. The mechanism of this detachment is not mystical. It has a precise biochemical basis that connects us to realities that seem like pure science fiction. If consciousness is capable of unfolding from matter, there must be a trigger that initiates this journey. And this is where science, even while seeking material explanations, offers us one of the greatest clues about our potential: the role of dimethyltryptamine, or DMT. This substance is a powerful molecule found in countless plants, but crucially, it is also produced in small amounts by the human brain itself, mainly in the pineal gland. For the ancients, the pineal gland was known as the third eye, the seat of the soul. Putting symbolism aside, its role in the sleep cycle is vital. Its potential ability to produce and release DMT at key moments, such as in deep sleep, at birth, and at death, suggests it is not a mere hormonal regulator. It acts as a neural passage portal, and DMT would be the chemical key that, by flooding the nervous system, turns off the filter of consensual reality run by the waking brain. This leads us to the conclusion that DMT is not a random chemical byproduct. It is an intentional biological mechanism. When studying altered states, science observes that this molecule induces experiences that are structurally identical to reports of out-of-body experiences and contact with other dimensions. This implies that our body has an internal switch designed to change the frequency of our perception and allow interaction with realities beyond our usual sensory capacity. Sleep, from this perspective, is a process of chemical saturation that ensures consciousness has an open path. Your ability to explore other dimensions is a biological function programmed to be activated systematically. And DMT acts exactly as the biochemical bridge that not only allows the separation of consciousness, but makes it easier, paving the way for the non-local journey. If your own chemistry is the catalyst that lets you access this vast domain beyond space and time, where does your consciousness go? The answer, surprisingly, comes from modern physics and the most revolutionary concept to explain the coherence of these nightly encounters: the multiverse theory. This is not fantasy, but a series of mathematical models that suggest that our known reality is just one of infinite possibilities. According to this theory, existence is made up of a vast set of parallel universes, where each universe contains a different variation of events and choices. To simplify, imagine that with every big or small choice you make, the career path you chose, the yes or no that changed your life, the universe branches out. Existence, then, would be composed of a vast set of parallel universes, each containing a different variation of events and, crucially, a different version of you, where choices were made in the opposite way. These universes are not distant in space. They coexist with us on a subtly different vibrational frequency. In this scenario, the dream would be like tuning. Think of your mind as a very sophisticated radio receiver. While awake, we are fixed to the frequency of this consensual reality. However, when DMT and sleep soften the brain's filter, consciousness gains the freedom to sweep the dial of dimensional frequencies. What we call a vivid or coherent dream is, in fact, the mind briefly tuning into one of those parallel realities that coexist with us. This view explains the strange coherence of certain dreams. Many people report visiting cities that are structurally functional or encountering landscapes that feel real, but have never existed on this plane. If the mind were only fabricating, these realities would be purely chaotic. Instead, the mind is, for a moment, operating in a spectrum of reality where the laws of physics are slightly different, yet perfectly logical for that specific universe. You are not creating these worlds, you are visiting them as an observer or participant. The multiverse's implication for sleep is that your nightly journey is, in essence, a scouting expedition. It is your higher self or your detached consciousness gathering data from a vast field of possibilities. DMT's ability to open access only confirms what physics suggests. The realities are not hidden. They are simply operating at a different energy frequency, and our biological mechanism was programmed to reach them. So, your mind every night is literally crossing borders and accessing other realities. But if there are countless versions of reality waiting, this raises an even more fundamental question. Who do we meet in those places? And what is the fate of our own self in those other dimensions? If your mind acts as a tuner that picks up dimensional frequencies, then the characters who inhabit your most vivid and coherent dreams are not just inventions of the subconscious. They are, in many cases, other versions of yourself or individuals who exist at the frequency your consciousness is accessing at that moment. This explains why some dream encounters feel strangely familiar, with an emotional weight that does not match your waking life. It is your consciousness recognizing a bond that exists in a parallel reality. The odd coherence of these encounters is the key clue. Instead of meeting random figures, we often face people who carry a complete history, a set of beliefs, and even a relationship with us that never existed in the here and now. This experience suggests your nightly journey is, in part, an exchange of information among your various existential variations. The dream works as a crossover point, where your version in this reality gets insights or, at times, borrowed feelings and memories from a life you chose to follow in a parallel universe. This idea turns the dream into an invaluable source of personal knowledge. If you meet a version of yourself who is braver or who made a different career choice, you are accessing a library of possibilities. It is as if you were receiving feedback from realities you could have manifested, allowing your current self to understand the consequences of paths not taken. This is wisdom that goes beyond common self-knowledge. It is multiversal wisdom. So what seem to be characters in a nightly drama are, in fact, agents of information. They support the idea that identity is not singular. You are not just the self who is watching this video. You are the totality of all your versions in all possible realities. The mind, in its role as navigator and receiver, brings back a vast amount of data from this multiversal network. But if we are in constant contact with this infinity of parallel realities, why does most of this information fall apart in seconds when we wake up? The answer lies in the crucial function of forgetting, which is not an accident but a highly efficient protection mechanism, essential for our sanity and for the stability of the reality in which we operate. Imagine the brain as the guardian of consensual reality. Its main function is to maintain a single, stable, and predictable narrative based on the laws of three-dimensional physics that enable our survival. If, upon waking, the ego were instantly flooded with the full memory of having lived an entire life in a parallel dimension, having seen the future in another, or having operated without a body in a third, the border between the real and the dreamlike would collapse. The mind would be overloaded with conflicting data. Forgetting acts as a cognitive stability filter. The brain, reactivating its logic and prefrontal cortex, works actively to reintegrate consciousness to the local frequency, sweeping away memories that do not fit the main narrative. The dream is not forgotten because it is meaningless. It is forgotten because it is overly meaningful and threatens the structure of our base reality. But the wisdom here is understanding that this filtering is selective. The brain is not an enemy, but an administrator that decides what is safe to keep. Most details may be forgotten, but the emotional essence or pure knowledge of certain dreams often remains. These fragments are the ones that manage to cross the protection filter. They are proof that consciousness tried and managed to leave an anchor of information in the waking state. So the question is not what the brain fails to remember, but what it chooses to preserve. What remains after the nightly journey carries weight and purpose. But what happens when this filter fails, or when consciousness deliberately breaks this barrier? The brain's stability filter is powerful, but it is not infallible. What we are allowed to remember carries a power that can rewrite our waking life. There are those dreams that refuse to fade, that stay imprinted for years, or that carry a sense of urgency or completeness that does not fit any waking experience. These persistent fragments are evidence that consciousness, intentionally or not, pierced the barrier and left a coded message for the waking ego. At this point, the dream goes beyond mental processing and becomes a channel of inborn wisdom. Insights that change a life decision, the complex solution that appears instantly, or the intuition about a future event are not coincidences. They are anchoring points, essential information that your consciousness, operating at its maximum capacity in the multiverse, judged vital for your evolution in this reality. The mind, upon returning, prioritizes this information because it carries high energetic and practical value. This ability to retain unlearned knowledge is one of sleep's greatest mysteries. People wake up with an understanding of a physics concept they never studied, or with the feeling of having spoken a language they do not know. This supports the idea that the mind was not fabricating, but rather pulling data from other variations of the self in parallel universes. What you retain is proof that you are more than just your current version. You are a walking library of multiversal experiences. The value of the dream, then, is not only in the journey, but in what you manage to bring back. These fragments should be treated like maps or directions from a wiser self. They are direct communication between your freer essence and your waking persona. But if consciousness can leave these valuable fragments in the waking state, how can we master this skill? If sleep is a portal and consciousness is a dimensional traveler, the waking state holds the potential to turn this passive journey into an active exploration. And this brings us to lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is the point where waking consciousness meets traveling consciousness. It is the final proof that we can master frequency control and operate in the dream state with full intention. Lucid dreaming works as training for the non-local mind. When you become aware that you are dreaming, you reactivate the prefrontal cortex, logic, which is usually inactive, and insert it into the environment of total freedom in the REM state. This fusion allows you to command navigation, question the characters, the versions of the self, and more importantly, collect specific information with the goal of bringing it back to waking life. This practice raises the nightly journey from a mere psychological phenomenon to a refined cognitive skill. It not only strengthens recall, but also increases the coherence of experiences. Lucid dreaming is, in essence, voluntary access to the multiverse's files. You stop being a mere spectator and become the director of your expedition, allowing yourself to freely explore the block universe. For those who seek wisdom, mastery of lucidity is the key to full integration of the self. It provides a private laboratory where physical and temporal limits are abolished. You can practice a skill, face a fear, or get the solution to a complex problem, knowing this experience will be recorded as pure knowledge and not as simple fantasy. This step brings us to the synthesis of our whole journey. After all, if consciousness is so vast and the exploration is an inborn and trainable ability, what does this say about the true nature of our existence? This whole journey brings us to a single conclusion about our true nature, one that challenges the very concept of existence. The journey we have traced has redefined the idea that you are a confined being. We analyze science's failure to explain the emotional coherence of dreams, the mind's ability to navigate time as a complete archive, and consciousness's detachment from the physical body. We discovered DMT as the biological catalyst that intentionally opens access, and we understood that the destination of this trip is tuning to the multiverse, where you meet other versions of yourself. The synthesis of these points leads us to the greatest wisdom of all. Your consciousness is non-local and timeless. It is not a byproduct of matter. It uses matter, the body, as a transducer for a specific experience at this reality's frequency. Sleep is not a state of passivity, but a cycle of expansion and return. You go out to explore the totality of what you are, the sum of all your possibilities, and you return with fragments of wisdom that, if decoded, can rewrite your life. You are an unlimited essence, a point of consciousness that is constantly connecting to other dimensions. The brain filters this vastness of data, so your experience in this life can be coherent, but the veil is thinner than it seems. We now arrive at our final challenge. If every night you have a biological and chemical passport to explore parallel universes and their endless realities, your waking life can no longer be seen as an accident. It is the result of the information you allow to arrive here. But turning this knowledge into power requires intention. If you can master lucidity, you can direct your consciousness. You can seek the specific insight for your current problem. the understanding of a complex relationship, or the vision of a desired future. Passivity ends the moment you accept that you are an explorer. The next time you lie down to sleep, remember, you are about to leave gravity, linear time, and matter behind. Your consciousness is preparing for its cycle of expansion, and the quality of your waking life can be transformed by the purpose you carry in your mind before crossing the portal. So, if your mind knows where to find the answer, what will you intentionally seek on your trip tonight? Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with others so they can benefit from this message. And don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, reflections, and experiences. Thanks again for watching and for joining me. Take care and see you soon.